Hello witches, and welcome back to Activist Witches,
Hey!
where we discuss witchcraft and
Activism.
you can call me Isha, my pronouns are she, they.
And you can call me Raven, and my pronouns are they, them.
And in today's video, we're going to do something a little bit different.
Which has nothing really to do with witchcraft whatsoever.
This time, I don't have an excuse for it.
No.
Usually, I find good excuses on it, but this time...
But it is about us.
Yes, and it is about queerness, and it's Pride Month, so if nothing else, hopefully by the end of this you'll learn something, because we're going to discuss the BBC new TV series, What It Feels Like for a Girl.
Which we were in.
But before we get started, let me remind you that I've opened a coffee. And if you like what we do here, you can support us directly there with a one-off donation, a monthly donation, or even get a tarot reading with me Italian style. The low-income option starts at £5. And for the foreseeable future, all my profits from tarot readings go split equally between the Good Law Project and Cucci's to Gaza. So if you'd like to support me there, thank you so very much. Yes, to build on what you mentioned, the thing about What It Feels Like for a Girl is not just that it's the sort of biopic of Paris Lees, which is this quite well-known writer and personality. She was the first trans woman that was a columnist for Vogue here in the UK, so, you know, it's nice representation.
I think we were first introduced to her when she was on Bear Grylls'
Yes.
Celebrity The Island.
Yes.
And she had some fun conversations with Eric Roberts.
Oh, goodness me, yeah. But this is based on... her self-discovery, which also happened in the early noughties, 2000, 2001, I think.
A coming-of-age queer story set in the 2000s. What an original idea.
I think we're getting vintage. When it's been 20 years from a moment, it starts to get vintage, like Etsy is like that. So yeah. I think that's what's happening here. Like, we call it nostalgia. To us, it's still the 90s, but to normal people, not.
That's the thing, yeah. So, like, we like to... we probably do it once or twice a year, maybe. But we are in, well, sort of not anymore because we're not on Facebook, but we were in some extras agencies to be supporting artists in the background of different TV shows that are filmed in Cardiff.
Yeah.
We've done Casualty.
I've done Doctor Who.
Yeah, you're on Doctor Who. You've done on Industry.
There were a couple of shows that haven't been out yet, and films.
Yeah, there's a Tom Hardy movie that just never got released.
Yeah. It's just weird, but if you are familiar, why would you be familiar? In the South Wales area, in Cardiff specifically, since I think the relaunch of Doctor Who in 2005?
I think there was a BBC Wales office opened up before then, but bringing Doctor Who to Cardiff and filming in Cardiff and setting up the Bad Wolf Studios and the Rothlock Studios, since then a lot of shows... Like, in the late noughties, a lot of shows moved to Wales. There's Casualties now filmed in Wales, Holby City's filmed in Wales, Being Human, which is a vampire show that was filmed in Bristol, but from season 3 onwards, they moved to Wales and lived in Barry. We have Gavin and Stacey.
Yeah. There's a program called Screen Skills that is also local to Wales, and I think a lot of TV and film production has been moved here because it also costs people less to have people stay in Cardiff rather than in London. So there you go. It's just one of the industries that are here, and it's nice pocket money to have. It's something that on and off, more off than on. I think it was called Fallen Divas at the time, and that's the working title that we knew it with.
Interestingly, they changed it to the name of Paris's book, What It Feels Like for a Girl, because of the Supreme Court ruling that came out. So they're like, okay, no, it's not the time to be coy about this. Like, this is what we're going to call it. And the papers have gone absolutely ballistic about this.
They have. I haven't checked. Like, I'm just glad that this is out. Like, it's one of those situations in which, being queer people, we are so starved for representation that any representation is good representation. However, we have thoughts about this representation, and that's why we're here.
Especially because, we answered the casting call because they were looking for specifically LGBT people, specifically trans people, and they wanted couples as well because there would be lots of intimacy scenes. You might notice there's like one gay couple that are constantly making out in the background. They made money. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah. When you kiss on camera, that's good money. That's good. I found it peculiar that we went there as a couple and they knew, and they never asked us to kiss. And these people that actually are kissing on camera, and it's the same couple twice in two different, supposedly into different clubs. And they were people that didn't know each other. Like, they met on the day and they just gave the availability. Oh yeah, I'm okay to kiss on screen.
I think that's just because lesbians weren't invented until 2012.
They were a thing.
Yeah, it would have been strange to see that in the background.
We're going to talk about that kind of stuff as well. Yes, indeed. Ellis Howard. Ellis I remembered because it's also Tom Ellis, which is most famous Cardiffian around, Lucifer. At the moment, I think is Cardiffian. I think is the most famous.
Well, no.
Who else is Cardiff? Like, I'm thinking of Tom Jones, I'm thinking of Anthony Hopkins, but that is Port Talbot.
Well, just out of a point of pride on things to actually be proud of, what's the name of the woman who played Persephone in Chaos?
Raki Ayola.
Yeah, Raki Ayola. Yeah, she is probably my proudest Cardiffian actress.
I didn't know that she was Cardiff.
Yep, Cardiff.
Okay.
And especially because she gets to play Persephone in something. So a black femme Persephone in a story that is about like their actual romantic relationship. Top notch.
Yeah,
much better.
Fair.
Much better than Lucifer.
I was kind of disappointed that Tom Ellis was the best export that we had. I won't lie.
Especially because she's using a Cardiff accent, which I don't think she normally has in Chaos, which is very cool.
Maybe this is the news, like the underworld really is South Wales. Mm-hmm. Anyway, let's get it. We have a lot. We have points, so let's try and get into it. I think the first point is the casting of Paris herself.
Yeah, playing... Well, so it's... The way we've made this show is that it's the fictionalized character of Byron that's meant to represent Paris in her younger years, which I think is how we're tiptoeing around the issue of, like, dead naming and he-himming. This is like a political correctness minefield that I feel like the BBC has created for themselves. Well, like, the liberals have created for themselves.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre. Like, yeah, we talked about this before. We have the casting of as Ellis Howard identifies, he is a
cis male,
cis guy, he/him pronouns. He's not had any acting roles before this.
He had one thing, but it wasn't like this is the first protagonist thing that he has, and he's 28, so it's in acting terms, it's like I'm very glad for him. But I think one of the things that he said in one of the interviews that he got, and mainly the interviews that he got in general, are because of what it feels like for a girl. And something that he said on the specific question about representation, it was like, oh, I have no idea because I have no experience of being trans whatsoever, which is where the influence of your cis then.
Yeah. This is a topic that comes up a lot, which is having trans people played by cis male people. Actors. So we had it in like the Danish Girl.
Yeah.
Thankfully, what's his...
Eddie Redmayne.
Yeah, Eddie Redmayne. But he's now said like, oh no, I wouldn't take that role now.
Yeah.
There's the way that Pose did it, which is...
I think it's the way to do it.
I don't know, I think there's a space in between that.
Okay.
There's a space in between using people as they've transitioned to play their pre-transition selves, because I think that could be quite...
jarring for them.
Yeah, for them. Like, to have transitioned and then having to mask up to play a pre-transition version of your character, like, I think that's a bit weird to go into, and it looks strange.
I think the only case that was done accidentally very well is Laverne Cox, because she has a twin, an identical twin.
Amazing, yeah.
That is male. So when they played, I think in Orange is the New Black, the scenes, the flashbacks where she hadn't transitioned yet, they should use their twin, which is a situation where you need to be very lucky, admittedly.
Yeah.
But I think that's like where we can aim.
It's like there's an argument to be made that like, oh, this is Paris pre-transition when they identified as male. But the show also goes to great lengths to keep highlighting that Byron is trans. Yes,
like I wouldn't have had as much of an issue if we didn't have any scenes in the entirety of like 8 episodes where there was no reference to the fact that as a child, Byron wanted to be a girl and was just pushed back by their father. But that there's a scene where Byron is just shouted at by his father. Oh no, you're a boy, you're not a girl. We don't know what happened, but there's just the shouting scene. And there's also a scene where they literally go to see a pediatric psychologist that suggests a referral for Byron for, was it gender identity disorder already? Or was it called something different? They literally say it. And the implication is his father never sent him because, no, you're not a girl, you're a boy. Let's not go to the... There's also a lot of stigma about the fact that, again, the process of going through the system makes you go to a psychologist, psychiatrist. So there's the stigma of mental health that is put on that, on top of the stigma of being trans. Intersectionality fucking matters. So yeah, there's all of that. And when it compounds, and so there's the implication, you know, it doesn't have to be for every trans person. I don't think it's for every trans person that you've always known. And it's fair that it's not, so...
But in this case, we have shown that it was.
But because we have shown it, I don't think it's ideal that we have cast a cis guy to play it, despite the fact that we can say, oh, Paris wasn't out and it's fictionalized, as much as, spoiler alert, it's not as much spoiler alert, like it ends with Paris starting her life as Paris, because I think the last line or something like that, it's someone asking her name, and suddenly instead of Byron, she says Paris. So
yeah, because there's a thing in media where you can take something as a Doylean perspective or as a Watsonian perspective. So if you are analyzing the character's motivations, then it's doing the Watsonian. So from like an in-universe perspective, this is about Sherlock Holmes. And then there's the Doylean perspective as like, what's the writer doing?
Okay.
This is an interesting case where we have both. So Byron is simultaneously a fictional character that we are using to tell a story, so we can analyze this from the story that they are trying to tell. But it is also of the author doing a autobiography.
Yeah.
A fictionalized autobiography, let's call it. So yeah, it's an odd place to exist, but yeah, you have to kind of go with, okay, but you included this in the show, so you did know what you were doing. And I think there's this anxiety that I can constantly see in TV shows that feature trans characters that are played by trans actresses, because there's an emphasis on beauty standards when it comes to, not so much in the UK, but this seems to happen to trans people.
Yeah.
When trans people are cast, they do go for the beauty standards. So if you look at someone like Yasmin Finney in Doctor Who during the 60th anniversary specials, and obvious choice being Hunter Schafer in shows like Euphoria, you can tell that there's an anxiety of, how do we tell the audience that this is a trans character so they know how good we are for including a trans character? Because everyone must know that this character is trans. How do we make sure that they know that, just in case we've cast someone who's too hot and passes too well, that they won't believe that this is a trans character? Oh, we'll have the scene of random transphobia.
Yeah, of course.
Someone has to dead name them. Someone has to call them a man. It has to happen. Every single time this happens, it's the same thing over and over again. And it's so recognizable. I think in this show, again, there's a reticence to cast someone early in their transition. Or just, perhaps there's a reticence for trans actors and trans creators to want to be out there because they want to look the best that they can and they want to be represented the best that they can. But I think there is a way to include someone who's out as trans. I mean, if we're using someone this is their first acting role.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone who's been on the waiting list, someone who hasn't. Yeah. We could have used someone who has that trans experience to bring some authenticity to it. Because the one thing we noticed when we were on set, and the one thing that's when we're watching it, is this is a fucking caricature. Like, we have examples of Paris as a person.
Yeah.
This is a completely different person.
Yeah. And, I'm sure that we're talking about a polishing work that lasted 20 years of who Paris was in the 2000s and who she is now. But, yeah, there's a point that it's not super relevant to this, but going back to the casting, it's a discussion that has been had in a lot of contexts that have to do with the professional work as an actor. There was an audition that you went to as an actor, and a play that I was sort of working related to that had trans actors in it, and there was a discussion had at a film festival that it's quite LGBT and popular, and the issue that keeps coming up is the other side of this reticence of casting trans actors, that is, when I cast you, you need to be visibly trans. The translation is you need to pass not 100%, because if I cast you and you pass 100%, I have that
You're not
problem.
making the point, yeah.
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is there is a spectrum of passability and desiderability of passability in the trans community, and that is not something that can be explored in media because at best media pats itself on the back saying, see, I'm doing some representation, but they don't have, from what I have seen, enough people working on it that are actually trans and have that experience to therefore bring that variety of experiences. So every single time that there's a piece of media like this, it brings the experience of the trans people that are specifically involved. So I'm not completely surprised that Paris was like, no, let's cast not a boy, a twink, I would say, which is a different gender if you ask me.
We'll get onto that for sure.
But yeah, I can completely understand the idea that there are scenes in which Byron puts on a wig, and admittedly,
it works well.
Yeah,
it does work well.
It works like it's part of the story itself of how she used to pass quite well naturally. You know, you have genetic lottery gifts at times and that kind of thing. Still, because again we went to scratch at the past.
Yeah.
Was Alice Howard the best choice? He does a pretty good job. I'm not questioning that.
But see, as a trans person who grew up in the noughties, I'm reading inauthenticity from the performance. Like you get the word I want to say wouldn't, like, as much as I say it in my own circles, it's not going to pass on YouTube. So
what is it? Tell me.
It's the absolute tree.
The opening scene. What the fuck is that about? You think?
So, yeah, having watched the entire show and then we went back to watch it, the takeaway that I have from that is that this is it's like Byron's shadow. Okay. But the dare that's given in this opening scene is, I dare you to live in the ordinary world, is, again, in retrospect, once you have seen the show, makes sense of, like, be authentic, be who you are, and live in the world, and kind of sets up this every single episode of the show then as an escape from reality.
Yeah.
So everything Byron does is escapism. It's trying to run away from things, and even running away from herself. So when she finally becomes Paris and she's going to uni, that's like, okay, I can stop running away now, and I can stay here and be myself be my authentic self in the ordinary world. But that was, it's like 8 hours in between.
Yeah.
That scene and that scene. And I don't understand why Byron's shadow is like total cybergoth.
That's
with
interesting.
The computers.
It's a bit Matrixy.
Yeah, this is the most Y2K thing we can possibly imagine. I never had that conversation with myself.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a dare I had to dare for myself.
So I think it's important to start off specifying, despite the fact that Alice Howard is 28 years old, he is playing a 15-year-old Byron. The age of consent and adulthood here in this country is 16?
16.
Okay, so keep this in mind. Byron starts off as a minor, legally, okay? And I think immediately in the first episode, we get a feeling that there's a lot of repression coming from his father. His mother just, like, ran away because I can't take care of a child. I'm a child myself. So his grandmother, his mama, is the main person, the adult person that he can rely upon. I feel bad saying he, but that's what we call Byron in the show.
Byron is a he, him character.
So yeah. Like at times Lady Di goes calling her girl, but it's fine. See, it's confusing for queer people as well at times. We go with that because it's the most popular that the show goes in. If I met Paris, I would have no doubt that I would go by she, her pronouns, or whatever pronouns she decides to give me for her. So that's a thing that is worth saying, because I know that a lot of people feel uncomfortable and they're like, oh, what do I do? I don't know. Sometimes we don't know. It's fine. It happens to everyone. You ask, listen, move on. But it goes very immediately into the sexual curiosity and liberation that Byron gets into, because he looks a certain way, and that certain way makes him look desirable to other men in certain contexts.
So how deep do you want me to go on this?
however you feel comfortable.
So there's so many aspects to this phenomenon. Like, it's a real phenomenon. It happens in real life. Again, I was a queer teenager in the noughties. Like, these are situations that I have been in personally. I have experiences that are very similar to what we get in this show.
We need more gin.
Yeah, first of all, I want to highlight something I found problematic in how the show dealt with this. So we get the classic queer person bullied in school with someone goes, "Ugh." Personally, I would have had that football thrown in my face. Like, that would have actually hit me in the face. It wouldn't be just like, "Oh, made you jump." And then we get, he's washing off the blood in the toilets. A man comes up, calls him pretty, pulls his cock out in front of him, and he runs into the bathroom and hides. And then it's like, "Oh, I'll give you a $5 to suck me off" thing. And then we kind of cut, and it's him telling the story. Now, it's quite clear that there's a dissonance between what we just saw and the way that Byron is telling the story. However, I don't think they made it quite clear enough how much of an unreliable narrator Byron is throughout this entire experience.
Yeah.
And the entire show and everything that he does. Because I think when we do have people who are well-meaning and they want to be as affirmative as possible, you will get some people saying, like, "Oh my God, that's so terrible. I mean, I'm glad he found it empowering," or whatever. And I'm like, no, this isn't empowering. This is trauma. This is the escapism, and these are the stories that you tell yourself because you are so starved for attention, so starved for love, and any attention that you get, anything that kind of gives you any sense of validation, even just as a person, not as a sexual object. Because he says, it's the thing that Byron says when telling his friend about this, is that I've got something they want, and that gives me power. And no, my sweet summer child, you do not have power in this situation. What I can't believe about this and how they do it is they create this like fantasy version that shows it of him strutting in to the bathroom with all these hot guys around. Yet while we have this like really gritty, clearly abusive predators who are preying on this young person. However, this highlights a lacking that exists in feminist academia. When we try to include trans women into essays on feminism and on the patriarchy and on the abuse of women and the difficulties that women face. The one thing that is left out because there's an incongruence if you don't accept trans women as women, as has always been women, then you get ideas like, oh, they're male socialized, they experienced male privilege up until that point, and they didn't have the same experiences. And like what the show does highlight is that a lot of trans women do have the same experiences. They are preyed on by predatory men in the same way that lots of young girls are. They get catcalled. They get, again, this is the situation of when you're using male bathrooms as a young boy, but there's something different about you, something that many trans women can attest to, everyone else sees, even if you don't see it yourself, that they will spot that and they will go for you. This is a thing that happens.
I think it goes back to the essay that we quoted of Talia Bath you have two categories and the third category that it's null, but in reality null is everything that is considered in this case fuck meat. You're not a man, you're not a woman that will be a wife and mother, so the third category is fuck meat for men, and that includes then something that is in another essay of Talia, and so that starts to include everybody that is the penetrable.
Yeah, penetratable.
Yeah, the penetratable rather than the penetrators, and that spans much wider than people perceive. There's this idea that men police each other as well in male contexts. And if you go out of the line, you will be disciplined by other men. What is not
Say, if the worst thing that you can be as a man is penetrated, what does that say about how they think about women? Right?
That they are for
Yeah.
that. So yeah.
And so the penetrators and the penetratables does seem to be this like innate, no, it's not that it's innate, but it's this thing that kind of like everyone seems to be able to recognize, or at least some people can recognize. And so lots of trans people grow up with this experience of like, hey, well, a lot of straight people who are bullying me are also then in my DMs. Right? And we get a bit of this in the show with Byron and the pimp/dealer.
Liam,
yeah. Liam is portrayed as this very kind of like straight, hard man, abusive, totally cis het. But there's something about Byron that's like, there's a quality here. There's something that I am happy to brainworm myself into thinking that this is okay for me as a apparently straight person to do. And the same goes for all of the old men that have wives.
Yes.
And this, again, so this goes back to ancient Greece. Mm-hmm. So this is a thousands-year-old practice. I mean, I say practice as if it's something that's like socially acceptable, but this is a phenomena that has been going on for a really long time, which is that if you don't accept children or teenagers as to be full people, to be real men, then they're in the fuck meat category and you can do whatever you want to them. And it doesn't even have to count as gay because it's only gay if you fuck a man, like a real man.
Yeah, it's the idea that, again, if you're not men, you're property of men.
Yeah.
And children, unfortunately, fall under that category because we think that they don't have, that are not fully fledged, and that ultimately the will of their parents can suppress them. Not so much because if explained, they could not understand. What's that rule that we have here?
Oh, the Gillick competence.
The Gillick competence is one of these things that I'm thinking about. So we see over and over in even medical context that children are very able to understand and give consent. The reason why we don't let them have that ability until they are 16, 18 is because they are considered property. It's the infamous thing, until you live under my roof, you will follow my rules. Does it mean that the adult person has more understanding of the world? Not necessarily, but they have more authority.
And so Abigail Shrier, who wrote the book Irreversible Damage with that fantastic cover of the little girl with the hole in the front that you can put the finger through. Like her whole deal now is she's pivoted to children shouldn't be given any rights whatsoever. They are under the complete control of their parents. And there's lots of movements in the US for parental rights. And again, so much of this stuff of, like when we call the gay community groomers, when the Republicans call the LGBT community groomers because we want people to be able to recognize themselves and be who they really are, it's complete projection. Because actually, when you shut down sex education, when you shut down education on all these different things and the rights of a child and teaching them things about consent and what good touching and bad touching is, they're against it because they want to be able to do it. Like, that's the only explanation that is there.
We made a video a long time ago about sex education and how sex education was coming here to Wales. I'll put a link down in the description below. In very, very short, the idea of the projection of LGBT people are groomers is these parents with the idea of my child needs to do what I tell them. If you, LGBT person, by existing, give my child the idea that they can be something different from what I tell them, you are making them stray from what I want them to be. Mm-hmm. So that's their vision of grooming, like make people aware that there are options and therefore children even can make educated choices that don't have to go in the same direction of their parents. And this is just not something that with the idea of ownership of people, we can get through because very, very few people that I know as parents have this understanding of simply because you made a child, it does not belong to you as a piece of property does.
And I think we can speculate all we want about the sexuality of the people who Byron has these experiences with. But the one thing that's very clear for the vast majority of them is that they are not in the LGBT community. No. Like they are businessmen, men with families.
Yeah.
They have wives. They're living the straight life. They are in the heterosexual regime. They are upholding their position, but they need a way to outlet their sexual frustrations and their sexual energies, and so they take it out on the most penetratable subject that's nearby, which in this show happens to be Byron.
Which, admittedly, it gets me to another scene that is not the next one that I have in my notes, but I think it's very relevant going along with this. And I think it comes in episode like 3 or 4, and Byron, Sasha, and Lady Di are out, all absolutely presenting as femmes. And something that Byron starts is they're out of the club, and there's a guy which, in my perception, is depicted rightfully as the most low-life cis-het guy that you can think of, that is so trashed after the club that he's just pissing in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
And Byron starts going to him, flattering him, basically. Like, oh, even if you're just pissing your... What word do I use? Your thing is so big, it must be... And it's not even hard, and so and calls Sasha, oh, don't you think the same? And if you watch this scene and think, why these beautiful girls go for the most despicable lowlife that one can find, would you like to explain as to why?
Well, yeah, I mean, the only attention that Byron's gotten so far is sexual abuse. Essentially, like, again, oh, I get power. This is the way that I can feel empowered. It's like, you're not being empowered, you're feeling empowered. But, again, it's the escapism. It's the not wanting to live in the real world, not wanting to be the authentic self. And so Byron objectifies herself, again, at this point. So, yeah, I can remember when I was a teenager that if anyone wanted to do anything with me whatsoever, all they had to do was pay me any kind of attention. And I was like, oh my god, oh, someone's paying attention to me. They've chosen me out of the group, and they see something attractive in me. Like, I would just be theirs, that they could do whatever they want with me at that point. And the show doesn't really go into a lot of detail about that. Like, the evidence is there. I think it's there to see if you have the experience and you understand it.
But it's too subtle for someone that doesn't come from the community to understand that it's why queer people, it's why young people in general are subject to like the literal real grooming. Yeah. Because when... it's the infamous thing of, oh, but you're so mature for your age. It's the classical thing that an adult person would say to a young person that is starved for attention and not recognized in their identity and not recognized for the value that they have. And they are in that phase of their life where their brain is showered with hormones that activates parts that they are like, what, where?
Exactly, yeah.
So all these different factors combined, and the loneliness and the being pushed to the margins creates this vulnerability that is very easy to exploit for actual groomers.
And I think when you have this, when you start dissociating in this way, like the rush that you get, which is your brain screaming danger, danger, danger at you, because you're so used to that feeling at different points. Like, at some point, Byron develops like a mild form of psychosis, and there's the anxiety of everyone constantly like being threatening.
The paranoia,
yeah. There's a paranoia from that. So I think there's a side of it where like the dissociation becomes a rush. It becomes, and they talk about like every time I get up somewhere high, I just want to jump. Yeah, that's something that's very, very easy to take advantage of, especially for a penetratable subject who's being taught that being penetratable is the value that they have. It's the power that they have.
Like, to me, it's mind-boggling, especially because we were physically around the cast, and I guarantee, like, the actress that plays Sasha is, I don't know, one of the top 5 most beautiful women that I've ever seen in person. Like, I had shivers when she was walking next to me. Like, it's, but she's of a level of beauty that cannot be expressed in words, and you have to, the film sort of delivers. But in person, it's like, it's being in the presence of divinity of some kind. It's just such a level of beauty. And the idea that I think society gives to to people marginalized in general, and specifically trans women in this, is that even as the most perfect, beautiful adherence that you can do to put yourself on the altar of the gender binary and following all the rules, the best that you can hope for is the lowest level man that will treat you like shit. And it sort of reminded me of that scene in Euphoria, Jules, and she talks about the way that she was going with men. That was on dating apps, and it wasn't necessarily sex work, and but
my relationship to men is weird.
Like how?
In my head, it's like, if I can conquer men, then I can conquer femininity.
The same feeling was coming true of, I was going with this kind of men that were treating me really badly, because having a man that supposedly has a family as well and all these kind of things, so officially is not LGBT, wanted to penetrate me, and therefore want me physically means that I'm enough of a woman because I've conquered femininity that way. Why? Through patriarchy and the way that patriarchy exists in femininity.
This is the focus of my final year at uni. So it was my dissertation, it was my final major project, that male socialization happened to me. It didn't work. I'm not male socialized. I am male socialization adjacent, in that it was something that was tried to be put on me. If I was male socialized, I wouldn't have fucking tits.
Oh my god,
However,
this is too good.
I would say that my childhood is absent of female socialization other than via patriarchy. So it is that sexualization of young girls. It is that penetratable subject, and especially through media, on what women are for. That's what media is constantly screaming at men and women all the time, is that this is what women are for. Even in the best attempts to kind of be nice about it, it's still, you get so often the hard to get, you just need persistence and you just need to keep pushing. And the best thing that a woman can hope for is to find a man to look after her.
Yeah.
Even if she is like, I'm so independent, I don't need a man, but then is always like the special man.
Yeah.
It comes from media, it comes from culture, it comes from radio presenters, it comes from newspapers.
From the Beauty and the Beast and the fairy tales of the 1600s that were trying to educate women that weren't witches about how they needed to bend their heads to men, hoping that eventually one would be turning into a good man. Yeah. I think even... it reminds me of, we mentioned it briefly, I think, in the 7 Deadly Sins from feminist lens, the sexual economics issue that is brought by the right of, no, it's not patriarchy that calls women sluts. It's other women, because women that just sleep around lower the value of sex and therefore lower the exchange rate of sex for marriage for other women.
But if we're even just dealing with sex as an economy, as a resource, fucking capitalism, man.
No. I think that quote comes from Why Women Have Better Sex Under Socialism, which is a book of its own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's the other side of things. The thing that a woman has to exchange, the resource under this system that is very laid out, is the ability to give progeny.
That is the practical value, yes. So you are your labor or your labor maker. But according to current culture, there needs to be a level of of aesthetic that you bring, which is the reason why fat phobia is more of an issue for femme-presenting people than male, and it's a currency that goes along, and it's the idea of the trophy wife and all that kind of thing. And the problem with that is that the moment that you are not only out in a aesthetic way, but out of a certain behavior, and so you're not demure. Soraya Chemaly in Rage Becomes Her goes very much into it, because it's like the moment that you are an angry woman, the femininity card, which has to do with how you look, with how pretty you are as well, starts to get revoked. Don't worry, it will start to get revoked. And that is an issue that I would argue happens to everybody that is non-man.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting how the guys that Byron sleeps with as a woman are, frankly, no different from any of the ones that she was sleeping with before.
No, yeah.
But the only difference is, now once she's there to be as a woman, when she's revealed not to be a woman, then it's gay. But when she's a young boy, it's not gay because young boys aren't men.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's this fascinating thing of like every trans woman knows that they spent their entire life told that they're not man enough, that they'll never be a man. Oh, you throw like a girl until you put on a wig and a dress. And then it's man.
Can't. I mean, that can't win feeling. It's very, very, very womanhood. that one alone. If you watch the entire series, you'll see it. Maybe now keep an eye out. There are a lot of these conflicting moments where on one side, Byron tells the story, and it's also cool and it's also fine, and the way that he talks to his friend, and the way that he, in general, like the way that at some point sort of fights with Sasha for the attention of Liam, which is, again, this scum of the earth man, but because he's considered to be a proper cis-het man, then whoever wins
someone
him...
who can provide.
Yeah, it's not even that. Because he's seen as cis-het, whoever gets chosen is therefore a woman.
Yeah, the real woman. Yeah.
Because the cis-het man has chosen you, and he surely could not possibly want anything but.
I mean, yeah, so the Bradley, the competition with Bradley.
Yeah.
On, like, yeah, who can be the sexiest to try and pull, like, the straightest guy that they know. I mean, so there again, there's a huge point about this, is that it's in the noughties. The language around trans issues and transness in the noughties was very different. The ideas around transness are very different. I don't think people realize how new the idea that a trans woman is a woman is.
Gosh, yeah.
Like, a trans woman was at best at the time secretly a man. So if she can keep that a complete secret and never tell anyone and live the life, then like that's the ideal outcome. The previous identity should never come out. And so like part of the gatekeeping process in accessing transition care is part of that. It's, are you going to successfully be able to pass? Because if you pass as some kind of non-woman, non-man...
freak, they would say, yeah.
Freak subject, then that's not going to be a fulfilling life, and you should just stick to being a man. Because that's, hey, you're going to be more successful at that than you are going to be as a woman.
I mean, you talked about it in the Illegal Woman video.
Yeah.
Like, the point was that the gender service, people like Randall, were there making sure, never delude yourself that you're going to be... You need to accept that you will be a man dressed as a woman. If we do surgeries, if you do anything, it's under my control and decision. If I decide that it's going to be good for you, and at best, you're still going to... Like, that was what the medical system in this country required for you to say and accept, even in being a trans person.
And there's some fascinating side effects of this, in which, so when it comes to changing your name and gender on HMRC, you use something called a Section D notice, which locks your previous records. So no one will ever be able to see anything that was before. That is a thing that exists for MI6 and MI5. Secret agents espionage. But because the mechanism exists, it's like, okay, let's give it to trans people so that once they live their new life, like that's it. And so part of it would be like you'd be expected to move across the country. You'd leave everyone you knew. No one can know who you are. As far as anyone you knew concerned, you're dead. And when you arrive in the new place, this is your new life, and you start it like you're in witness protection.
Yeah, gosh.
Or something. So, yeah, there's a lot of that that's in this. But I think there's also a point which is the stories that we're allowed to tell. Like, okay, fine, part of it is coming of age. Now the people who are in their 30s and 40s are of an age to be able to write books about their lives, to be in charge of shows. These are the stories that are kind of aging up to it. So there's that aspect of it. But also I think there is a, It's a Sin and Pose and Queer as Folk and this show. I think they are allowed to tell these stories about the past because that's where you can say that, when we bring up problems, when we bring up issues in society, we can say, oh, but that's in the past. We don't have to make any judgment about the present based on it, which is like a fascinating idea when the release of this show is so offensive that the BBC directors need to be lynched, according to the articles that are coming out about it. Like, people are so angry about this show.
Oh, the wokeness. I think the Telegraph
And it's just
went
like,
at it.
who are these shows for?
Yeah.
Like, are they for my mum?
I mean,
Right? Are they for Guardian columnists? Are they for... Like, it's definitely not for the LGBT community, because we all have so much to say about it, if we're even going to watch it, because, hey, here's another traumatic coming-of-age story set in the noughties, played by a cis actor. Again, who is actually going to watch this stuff? Most of the population find it disgusting and perverse, and how dare they put this on the BBC. What if children accidentally click on it? Willingly.
I think going back to our experience being there on set, there was something that you noticed that at times we were separated. We weren't necessarily always in the same scenes. Mm-hmm. And one day that we were both on set, they line us up and they need to pick 15, 20 girls because there's a scene in the girls' bathroom. So Lady Di and Byron are going to be in this bathroom, and Sasha follows them or runs to them. So picture this, we are talking about 3 trans women, one of which is not out, going into a woman's bathroom in a club in the noughties, and so they pick girls to be in these bathrooms because it was a long corridor. I was picked, so I had to walk there. We're not going to go in how much dysmorphia gave me the clothes and the ways that they put me into, because that's another complete different fucking story, and it does depend on the fact that I am and I was fat in the noughties when Paris Hilton and the lowest of jeans were around. So that is also, I think there is part of an essay of Talia that is about the degendering that comes with being a person of color and being fat. If I find it again, I'll put it there. But yeah, I was a butch lesbian at best, which is really not part of my identity, and I have nothing against butch lesbians, and I like them a lot, but it's not anything even remotely close of about how I feel. But I was put in that condition. I had to stay in that condition. I had to avoid mirrors because it was really distressing, actually. But anyway, I was femme enough in their vision to be picked for this scene. And I wasn't the only one.
No.
There were... How many trans actors there were, or non-binary, because you were in the non-binary category for them?
So yeah, I think there were 5 gender diverse people on the set. So there were... No, maybe there's only 3 of us, actually.
I felt...
No, sorry, there's 4. There's 4.
Okay.
Just remember the other one, because she was at the dressing with me. They were at... 4 because, there's one person who was at the dressing with me. But so... For us, when we do these things, we are just doing like, this is a paycheck. We're happy to be in the background. We're meat in a meat cloud.
Honestly, I never need to be seen.
We were not like vying for the front of the crowd to be like in every shot. But there was this other trans woman. So yeah, I was there as non-binary. There were 2 other non-binary, and there's 1 trans woman. And she was very active in like, oh, well, I just feel like I'm being pushed to the side a bit. Like I'd love to be more included in this. And this is where you get these different layers of production and the different power structures that you have to deal with. So there's the people who do the fittings,
wardrobe,
the dress fittings. That was all women. Everyone there was absolutely lovely. Like, oh no, we'll get you in this. Oh my God, you look amazing. Yes, absolutely. Ooh, no, I don't know if that shows you off the best. Let's put you into this. Let's try this. They're trying to get you to look your absolute best. And they did a fantastic job. Then you have the people who are the like essay handlers, the wranglers.
Yes.
They're the ones that herd us around and get us where we need to be.
The director assistants and stuff.
They're all women as well. Absolutely amazing. They're like, oh no, yeah, we want you in this scene. We want you up front and center. Then you have like the first assistant director.
Yeah.
I think that was a gay guy. And then there's like a cis woman director who's an absolute bitch on most of the day. But yeah, there's certain points when like they line you up like you're being judged as cattle.
Cattle, really.
And this guy comes in and goes, you. And you can tell who's picking, right?
Yeah.
It's very obvious. So again, you're like, oh my God, this is great. Like, I feel so looked after. And then like one person comes and like, no, we can't have you in shot. Like you're too up front. We need to push you to the back.
Yeah.
So you have to deal with these two sides where generally the people who have power, who've sought out the power and are in the power to make these kind of decisions, they're all cunts.
The higher you go, director, and then there's the people in the editing suite and all of that. Like Paris is one of the executive producers, but was she in the cutting suite where they were actually doing the editing? I'm not sure, not for everything. And all these decisions then get done on different levels. And the more you get there,
and especially in the editing room, that's where there's no supervising.
No.
So whatever effort is put in to be inclusive and to let's get as diverse a background cast as possible, they can just go, no, I don't like that person. He's ruining the shot, and cut. And so what I've noticed is that there's one scene that I was actually quite active in, that I'm completely cut from. And I kind of understand that because I'm quite prominent in the scene beforehand. But this other trans woman who's actually quite active about being present and being on screen, I've only spotted her once.
It's true. I think, wasn't she picked for the bathroom scene and then there was the questioning?
Yeah, so she was picked for the bathroom scene. She goes into the bathroom and then when she's there, they're saying
Somebody
things
there.
like, oh no, actually I don't know how okay it is for a trans woman to be in a bathroom in this scene, in the noughties, in a scene about trans women being in a woman's bathroom. It's
how do
choices.
you explain to these people? How can you even honestly, as a person, as an extra even, how can you tell the people that are there working and you are quite literally a decoration in the background? That's what you're paid for. How do you not see that what is happening here is we're having trans women in the bathroom? That's the scene. The protagonists are trans women and they are in the bathroom. And then you go no, I can't have an extra that is a trans woman because it wouldn't have been credible. And I don't want to be a hater, but I have to think that if you don't see something that is so obvious, you're being ill-intentioned. You're being not so secretly transphobic and homophobic.
So as someone who really didn't even want to be on camera necessarily, I'm in this 10 times more than I should be.
I'll put here a scene of your legs.
Yeah, and I'm in it, I think, 5 times more than you are, even though we were there together. Most of the scenes is actually us together.
Yeah. It's always the back of my head at best, which I'm very happy with. I don't mind. Again, I don't have the... But then again, we go into other sections of the wheel of privilege that has to do not only with gender, but also with presentation. So we have pretty privilege that goes across the genders, but especially when you have to present in a situation where you're playing not men, which means anything else that is not a cishet man. And in that, you are... not even statistically, but according to the current beauty standard, you adhere to that more than me, more than that other girl. So that's what these people go along with. What culture has gone without realizing that media makes culture. So the choices that are made in the set, in the editing room, in what goes out, are literally going to shape what comes next. And if there's not those people making those choices, deciding this is now visible, and it's going to be visible in a good light, which also depends on the piece of media, change is not going to happen.
I say, I mentioned it the other day, the story that I want to see now is a very common story, which is someone who, perhaps in their late 20s, mid to late 20s, early 30s, who knew that they were trans from a young age, or perhaps as a teenager or in their 20s, but because of that time in the late noughties and the early 10s, where things weren't really vocal about stuff, they just weren't sure how to navigate it because the conversation wasn't really happening. You had to be very clear about your desires and wants. And again, the ideas that are available to have is I can be a straight trans woman in this period that we're talking about. Trans lesbians are becoming much more common now because in the mid to late 10s, it was a much more common thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Trans visibility became much higher. It shot up. Trans acceptance seemed to be going in such the great direction. And then the lockdown happens. Then we get COVID. And so a bunch of people who've seen these beautiful, wonderful trans people living their best lives and going, oh my God, I wish I could do that. Suddenly when they're locked in their house with nothing else to do, go, maybe I could do that. Yeah, I don't know if there's anyone who's relevant here to
So have come out during lockdowns.
But I think that the drama that we can do about like what's current and what's currently going on in the push back against the trans community. So yeah, my story I can tell about this when I'm in the GP's office where I've booked an appointment to go ask for a referral to a gender clinic because we just opened one up in Wales. When I'm sat in the reception waiting to go for my appointment, GMTV or Good Morning Britain or whatever it's called today is on the TV, and on it is one of the TERFs who's come out to speak against the teenage transition epidemic, specifically in the spike in referrals for trans guys and trans masks, because this greater, wider trans acceptance, it gets to trans masks younger than it does for like teenage trans femmes, because we still have that like huge gender policing to deal with from our peers. Like, to be effeminate in any way is incredibly dangerous. So yeah, we get this shift where trans masks are transitioning earlier and trans femmes tend to transition later, but there's like 5 times as many trans femmes transitioning in their 30s and 5 times as many trans masks transitioning in their teens. So because there's this shot up, we get this, there's this discussion on GMTV about like rapid onset gender dysphoria, and we need to shut down the teenage transition service. And so yeah, I'm just like, cool, I decided to do this because I thought it was okay, and very clearly this is starting to not. But
that's back in 2019.
That's 2019, so this is only 6 years ago. That's a relevant drama that we can talk about.
Yeah.
Like, so many people found themselves during COVID, during the lockdowns, during the pandemic, and we've emerged from that into a much worse world than went into it.
Yeah.
That's interesting, I think.
That should be the next story that we tell. Is there someone that has not only the courage and experience, but the power? Because it is also...
tell a story that is actually relevant and actually speaks to the mechanisms that are going on now, because it feels like we're not allowed to.
Yeah.
Even things like sex education.
Yeah.
Sex education is set in a timeless era.
Yeah.
Euphoria started to do the same thing. Like, season 1 was very glitz and glam and modern, and then season 2 becomes this like grungy 90s dreamscape thing.
Change of battery, change of setting. Bev. Bev is our last point, because otherwise we're going to be here for a long time. Bev is the woman bouncer that we meet in episode 2 when the girls are about to get into a club. And you'll actually find Raven in the background.
Smoking an entire pack of herbal cigarettes, because we have to keep doing that take over and over and over and over again. I think it's like one shot where you can see the cherry of the cigarette light up in the background, in the very blurred background,
But the legs, we only see legs. I'm very glad. Okay, no distraction. Okay. Bev seems incredibly supportive of the girls, especially of Sasha. You're beautiful. Compliments to the new pair of tits that she got in Istanbul. Amazing. Until later in the episodes, when we mentioned that Byron and Sasha go in this weird kind of competition for Bradley, the straightest guy that you can think of. Well, Bradley is Bev's nephew. And the day that Bev hears that there might be something between Sasha and Bradley, she goes to Sasha's house ready to beat her up. And Bev is somebody to be afraid of. She goes to her house and Sasha guarantees, no, it happened once. And you can tell that Bev is bothered, but like, fine, it happened, it's fine. And before Bev goes away, she realizes that there are shoes there, those are Bradley's, so no, it wasn't a one-off thing, and Sasha and Bradley are together. And Sasha gets battered for it, so much so that she has to move, because at the point it's dangerous for her to be there, and Bev very simply threatens to do more than just beat her up. And that in a nutshell is how dishonest sometimes the support, or the way that we think we support the LGBT community at large and trans people specifically.
I mean, this is why the trans community is getting very sick of like, oh my God, you're so valid. Nobody can tell you who you are. The validity politics of things of, what was it when we were at the Diva Awards? Every single speech ended with trans women are women, trans men are men, and non-binary people exist. And it's like, okay, but do we have rights?
I don't even think that people realize how performative it is. Like, I do believe that, I was going to say if you don't know trans people in your life. No, clearly in the example of Bev is, even if you know trans people in your life, but until they touch your life, you don't quite know. I don't know why the brain does not connect. It's something that happened to me specifically as well. Like, I have always been very LGBT adjacent at the very least, in the time that I deluded myself to be not LGBT, but just an ally. See? Life in the closet. And I've always thought for a very long time that I was absolutely of course, trans people are valid and all of that. And then when Raven came out, it took me a good 9 months to adapt to what it then meant in our life and in my life and about my own identity and about the way that we related to each other. And there's also a very dangerous side of the community there that goes in the idea that identities and personal identities are to be so paramount that ideally, if you're a couple and somebody comes out, you should split. Just in case, you should split. You should split, and then maybe if you find each other again one day, good. Which I think is very irresponsible, because you need to be also very careful about the support networks that people have. And I know that to me, what made me then click was this fact that a lot of people were just telling me, oh, you know, you're heterosexual, you will always reduce down your partner to what they are not, what they don't want to be, how dare you, you should leave them. Which is a notion that I don't like, but we have entertained in our time when you came out. Like, we had to look at each other and I was like, am I ruining you? So we both had this thing about, oh no, I have to let you go. I'm just going to give you these 2 cents, and you reflect on your own identity and see what's more important to you. But what got me unstuck at the time, one of the things that got me unstuck was this idea of, I know this person, I love this person, I have this emotional, intellectual, sexual connection with this person. And what people are telling me is that the theory of my sexuality being heterosexual is so much more important than this person that I already know and connect with, that I need to leave them to find an hypothetical possible man, therefore, that exists, that I won't necessarily have that emotional, mental, and sexual connection with.
So important for you to be with a man.
What? Like, the moment that I got there, I was like, there is not one person, man, woman, or otherwise out there that matters and connects to me as much as Raven does. So there's absolutely no issue there. But that is the main reason why people split up.
And we get so stuck into ideas of sexuality that they're even saying things like, if you still find yourself attracted to them, then that means that it's because you still see them as a man. And so you just, by being attracted, as a straight person, by being attracted to them, you are misgendering them sexually. Yeah, in that way. And it's like, we're just attracted to you because you like who you like. Yeah. Maybe like having strict ideas about what you can never be. Maybe that's a bit limiting. It is.
It's something that I do not wish on others, like the kind of turmoil that I went because I was so stuck in what society told me the things that I were supposed to look like and be, that the main issue, I think, was with my own identity of like, but am I a lesbian? And if I am a lesbian, then do I need to like all women? Like it goes fast. It goes fast.
Descriptive, not prescriptive.
It was very confusing for that. Until I finally got to the point and I was like, I'm sorry, are we saying that there needs to be this hypothetical shape of a man that I am leaving Raven for? That, no. Not any person, because I don't know, maybe then it's very specific about the kind of demi-romanticness and demisexuality that I have could also be. I'm not saying that this applies to everyone, but I think it's a very important question to ask yourself, should you ever be in the position that you start to question your own identity because of the people around you, because somebody comes into your life of an identity that you think you know, understand, and support, but actually you never had it in your life, so you didn't know how that affected you.
Yeah, I think like it goes into the penetratable thing we were discussing earlier, and you know, in a way, like a bit into the pederasty side of things, but like the number of guys that find themselves attracted to femboys, and they think that like, oh, that means that they must be bisexual or pansexual. And it's like, I don't think your like the sexuality part of your brain that has sexual attractiveness to things can discern the nuances of the femboy to be able to make an accurate description about whether or not it's socially acceptable to be attracted to them or not. Like, there's a good test for, say, your own biases, but also social biases as well, which if you find yourself attracted to someone, if you find yourself falling for someone, even just someone that you want to fuck, the question to ask is, would I or could I bring them home to my parents?
And that's the difference, children.
Yeah.
That's as simple as it goes.
I mean, if it's no, the question is because I'm embarrassed to, or because I know my parents aren't going to be into it.
And that, in a nutshell, is how you realize the difference between what you are and what you want and who you are, and what you start to fetishize because culture tells you shouldn't like it. Thank you for coming to our TED Talk. Anyway, those were some thoughts, not necessarily about what it feels like for a girl, as you can tell, but taking...
It brought up a lot of things. Like, we read too much to enjoy shows these days.
Honestly. And it's some scenes from it that maybe gave us the excuse to tell you a bit about the trans and non-binary experience and the queer experience at large, and also the experience that we had at Extras. But yeah, I hope this was interesting. If you have any questions, like the experience or anything, we're here. We're always here. Go down in the comments and we'll have a chat. And that's it.
Yeah.
I think until the next time, we really hope that we can
peg the patriarchy together.
We should peg the patriarchy together because there's need for it.